We are live. I've been waiting for this event for so long now. We've been talking about this cybersecurity event, Brendon and I, for so long, and it's finally here. I can't believe it's already here. Welcome to Cybersecurity. It's a business problem, not a tech problem. The exciting part of why I've been waiting for this event to happen is because there's such a misconception out there around cybersecurity, and to have someone like Brendon on the show today is really powerful because he's got such a wonderful perspective on this, which we're going to go through. But first, for those of you who are not aware, my name's Dave Clare. I'm the CEO and founder of Circle Leadership, and we help leaders to evolve themselves and their businesses to stay relevant. I'm also the ambassador for the Global Company Culture Association and for Smile Kumba, and I've written a couple of books and a few other cool things, but the things I'm most proud of is that I am the proud father of 3 and the world's greatest husband, yet to be backed up or supported, but I'm running with it. Out of all my accomplishments, those are the ones that are most important. So that's a bit about myself. This event I'm really excited about, as I've said, because we have Brendon here, and Brendon's organization, without taking too much of his thunder away, really helps businesses stay strategically ahead of the game. And I think this is really important in today's uncertain times. Is finding a partner that you can work with that's going to strategically help you stay ahead of the game is critical. But one of the things that is really important is what makes them unique in the way they think about that is one of their core values is security, which from an IT company might sound, kind of what you would expect. But when you think about their definition, which is assurance that inspires confidence, they want to make sure that you have the assurances that you need, that you're extremely confident to go on about doing your business the way that you need to do your business. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Brendon Asciak, the tech evangelist, the IT security fanatic, and all-round fitness nut. Brendon,
and world's greatest husband.
And he's competing with me for being the world's greatest husband.
I'm going to one-up you, though. I'm going to go world's greatest dad as well.
Oh, well, I thought I had that for 13 years in a row, but then when my kids, reached those pre-teens, it was like, it was all over. We've got Chitra Lili. Greetings from the UK. Thank you, Chitra, for joining us. Brendon, mate, talk to us. Tell us a little bit more about yourself before we get into the whole cyber thing so people know who they're listening to.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Brendon. I'm founder of the ABSH Technology Group. And as Dave said, we help clients strategically stay ahead of the game. And one of the core offerings we do that in is cybersecurity. We're a very different organization in how we approach that, though. We're very much want to look at it from a risk-based perspective. It's not about selling you shiny, blinky light objects that try to or claim to protect you. It's about understanding what's important to you, what are we trying to protect, and what's the risks to those particular assets. I've been in the industry for 22 years now, 10 of which I've been
22 years old.
Yeah, I get that quite often, but it's thanks to OBS Studio and some tricky lighting and a green screen. I started the organization, to be honest, because I saw there was a big gap in the market. If you go to big organizations, they've got lots of experts on staff. They've got IT personnel and chief information security officers and chief information officers and chief security officers and lots of officers. But when it came down to the small business, they had the same needs. In fact, sometimes they had more needs because they have less kind of structure and function in and around their organization. But very few IT providers were providing that level of service or those services to that marketplace. So we started to try and address that problem. I've got a background in cyber, so first of all, I've got a bachelor in computer science. I cut my teeth in programming and have a pretty good understanding of how computers work and how applications work. And I've also a certified information system security professional and a certified cloud security professional from our friends at ISC². That makes me, and boils down to basically, I'm a pretty big cyber nerd. That said, you'll never get me kind of claiming to be an expert in cyber. Cyber is a very general category from an information technology standpoint. Lots of specialities within there. I can talk to some of them, but not all of them. So I'm just a guy that likes to geek out in cyber.
All right, awesome. Right. Well, thank you for that, and it's great to know the depth of your experience and qualifications that you have to back it up. So through this live stream, what we're going to cover is we're going to talk about the misconceptions, as we call them, that exist out in the world there today. Then I'd really like you to talk to us about strategies for organizations. Then I'm going to throw at you some objections that people have around cybersecurity, and then hopefully we can move into where do people start, and who should they seek out for help. All right, so let's do it. So let's start with what do you see as some of the common myths. I've talked about 4 big ones. So what do you see as the common myths that people have about cybersecurity?
I think the first one is fundamentally most small business, or effectively most business owners in general, don't really understand the gravity of the cyber threat. It is an industry. It is in some cases, a legitimate industry, at least they feel it is, and it has a full supply chain. So we're not talking about, when we talk about the cyber threat, we're not talking about the pimply teenager who's got some time off on school holidays and wants to hack into your network for fun. Outside of your nation states, which in general you're not going to be a target of. Typically they target government, military, and other more strategic assets. But outside of that, cyber criminals are well funded. It is a massive industry which has a huge supply chain. They have, there's payment providers. There are partners that just develop the ransomware. There are partners that test the ransomware to make sure it's going to not be detected by your Symantec's and your McAfee's and your Microsoft Defenders and all your different endpoint products. There's partners that just deal with marketing. So these guys, they're responsible for spam and phishing and sending all the stuff to you. And I don't think what people understand is that they recruit people into these industries, and the people that work there think and feel like they're working at a legitimate organization. It is not uncommon for threat actors and criminal gangs to put ads on for penetration testers and white box testers and things like this. And these engineers and professionals go to a legitimate building and they feel they're working for a legitimate company, and they've got KPIs and metrics and performance reviews.
How many people did you rip off today? Let's check.
Yeah. Look, honestly, some of these the criminals could have a great job as actors, because to keep up that front for that long with that many people, and some of these organizations have 300, 400, 500 people in them. It's quite a skill.
So some of these organizations that you said they're well funded and organized, they can be more well funded and organized than a good old honest ethical business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would argue that
they have like strategies, and they have like missions and values, and do they have all that stuff as well, you reckon, or not?
I'm not sure they've got values, although some have come out and said we won't attack hospitals in order to try and kind of, I guess, not get on law enforcement radar.
Right.
So there are some of them that have said, we don't feel it's ethical to kind of attack hospitals. We don't mind attacking the accounting firms and the banks and stuff, but not many of those. And to be fair, we've seen very recently lots of hospitals and pipelines and critical infrastructure being hit. So that's probably not as much. But what they do have,
they have a moral code of sorts.
Of sorts. What they definitely have though is targets. They absolutely have bonus structures for people that are quite successful and can do things faster, and they have growth targets, and it's $1 billion industry. One ransomware crew last year did $1 billion just on their own. So,
wow. So is there like a Forbes 100 for like these?
There is. There's certainly the more well-known, and if we just talk specifically about ransomware, for example, there's various operators that develop that ransomware, and then if you wanted to, Dave, if you feel that you could survive in a non-extradition treaty country, it's not that hard to get into. You can jump on the dark web and have a chat with some of these crews, and they'll give you business in a box, effectively. They give you the instruction manual. They give you the software, and they say, okay, Dave, this is how you use the product, and this is how you kind of configure it and set it up. And then here are all the partners that you can use. So these guys can do the marketing for you, and these guys can handle the payments for you. And one thing that you do have to do, and if we're talking about moral code before, because it's an affiliate program, if you do install ransomware on someone's computer and you don't pay them, if you do install ransomware on the computer and you don't give them the decryption code after they've paid, they will kick you off their network. The affiliates, the entire ransomware concept works because consumers know that when they pay, and then we talk about we know that 83% of ransomware victims end up paying the ransom. Call it an inconvenience tax. It's not because they couldn't recover or because they didn't want to. It's because 9 times out of 10, you've got 20, 30, 40, 50 computers and they've all got to be recovered. It is more convenient and quicker for you to get your operations back online by simply going and paying their ransomware. And that works because you have trust in the ransomware provider that they will give you the decryption key because they have done so previously. So if there's a kind of a lone ranger or a lone wolf that kind of signs up to one of these business inner boxes and starts infecting customers but not actually giving them the keys, the actual parent company that owns the actual franchise comes out and basically has a tap them on the shoulder and come on, you need to pony up that ransomware key, otherwise you're not going to have such a great day. We might report you to ransomware, to law enforcement. So,
wow.
Yeah, there's also, don't forget, there are ransomware negotiators too. There are legitimate companies whose entire role is to make connections with the ransomware criminals and then negotiate a ransom. So they offer 50,000, you offer 20,000, they counter with 30,000, they go back with 25. Yeah, it's a big industry.
So you can actually hire professional negotiators.
Almost all negotiations, or any large size ransomware that you've heard in the paper would have or absolutely had used a negotiator. No question.
So firstly, cyber is actually an industry. So this is a full-blown, well-funded, organized industry. Secondly, you are a target.
100%. Yep. You are a target, and
83% of, you say 83% of people who are targeted pay the inconvenience tax or the kidnapping ransom.
Yep. It's most of the time they're not prepared for it. And we'll talk a little bit about that later.
Yeah.
But most of the time they weren't prepared for it, and it's quicker and easier to pay the ransom and just get their operations. It's not so much the cost of what happened, it's the cost of that sustained downtime. You've got 20, 30 people that can't do their job. How do we, I can't afford to have a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks for them to recover the system so that they can start work again. And think about in the case of hospitals or time-sensitive organisations, that means patients can't get care. I know that New Zealand called in their military to do recovery for a couple of hospitals that were hit.
Wow.
Because they didn't have the resources internally to do it, and they also didn't want to pay the ransom. So they used the brute force method, which is lots and lots of resources, trying to recover lots and lots of machines to help them get back online. But absolutely 9 times out of 10, or 83% of the time rather, people pay the inconvenience tax. The other big myth I think people don't realize is cyber insurance is another whole headache. And Dave, I think we could probably do another live stream just on that topic alone.
I've got a lot of insurance clients who'd probably love to jump in on that. Yeah.
It's another whole complex topic. Number one, it doesn't insure your losses. So if you've got a trust account, and I had I won't say who, but I had a client who had a significant size of money stolen, and that money wasn't theirs. It was sitting in a trust account, and the insurer doesn't cover that loss. They'll cover the forensic people to come in and investigate what happened and how it happened. They'll cover the remediation. So if we've got to rebuild machines or buy new equipment or call in experts and to do forensics, they'll cover all those costs. They'll cover your PR costs as well, generally. If you've got to go out to public and notify, or if you've got to pay for credit reporting on people that were impacted, they'll cover those things, but they don't cover the losses. The other thing to also think about is many, many small businesses that I work with, and I've done lots of incident response, they make this fundamental mistake. And if you take nothing away from today, take this. When you have a breach, if you have cyber insurance, the first person you should call is your cyber insurer. Most of your policies will have clauses in there that say something to the effect of, if we do not have this particular report, or if this particular party didn't do an assessment of your environment before you did your remediation works, your claim is void. So cyber insurance, A, it doesn't cover you for the losses, and B, if you don't ring them and engage their experts and their people to help assess what happens and do the forensics and so forth and take you through that journey, they generally will void your claim. So just be wary of that. Lesson here is make sure you, sorry.
Will they pay your the actual ransom itself under insurance?
This is a grey area. Up until very recently, yes, they did. But insurers have been losing money. The number of ransomware payments or the cost payout for the insurers exceeded the funds coming in for the actual policies. So at the moment, there's been one major insurer who has just made a new policy that says we won't pay out ransoms, but previously they have. So that will depend on who your underwriter is for your actual insurance policy. And to be fair, I think you'll find all of them are going to transition to that. And I think they're getting a bit of heat from law enforcement because conversely, what keeps the entire industry going is money. If insurers weren't paying out the ransoms and if clients weren't paying out the ransoms, the ransom operators wouldn't operate because there's no one to make any money. But yeah, number three is definitely cyber insurance doesn't cover you from a losses point of view and potentially for a ransom point of view.
Right, that's a big one there, right? So can you just say the thing about your insurance people again? That you need to, as soon as you find out,
the first person you should call is your insurer, assuming you have cyber insurance. If you don't have cyber insurance, then ideally don't call your IT people. Call it a cybersecurity practitioner or a cybersecurity professional, especially someone that's qualified and experienced in incident response, because how you manage an incident, you can do it well and you can do it poorly. And one of the things many operators do is they want to recover systems quickly, but when you recover, you eliminate the evidence. And if you eliminate the evidence, sometimes it can be difficult to then ascertain what happened, how did it happen, who did it, and when you're then trying to explain into the media what's happened, it can be a bit more difficult for you. But
cool. So Afif just put a comment up there. It's hard. It's a hard truth, truly. Cybersecurity is a totally underestimated threat to any business, especially in this part of the world. The threats are so high, and the medium business owners are not worried. I'm trying to read over my camera here. Or careful about the cyber threats.
Yeah, 100%. I would say probably also, I think certainly in Australia, I think they're starting to be aware of it, but I think many of business owners put their head in the sand and hope that the issue is going to go away or have that kind of mentality. It won't happen to us, or we'll deal with it when it occurs. The challenge with that is you are a threat. You are at risk, and you definitely are going to experience an incident. The Australian Cybersecurity Centre has said that we need to transition our strategies from a defence strategy, so trying to defend systems and assume that we're not going to be attacked and our defences are strong enough, to a what's called a zero trust. Just assume that you're going to be breached because you will be breached at some point. But I think also, to be fair, and I'm not going to be popular for saying this within our industry, but I think the IT industry as a whole has done a really poor job at communicating the risk. And I also think we've also done a really poor job because we have a tendency to blame the end users. In any business, you have people, process, and technology. The people that work there generally don't have a strong cyber knowledge to stay safe online. They're not going to be experts in spotting phishing emails and trickery. And remember that I just mentioned, this is a full industry. There is somebody's full-time job to craft malicious emails to trick you into clicking on something. In some cases, they'll register new domains that are very similar with maybe just one spelling mistake. Circle leadership with 2 S's.com. So that when you get that email, it looks legitimate to you. That if you have that level of sophistication and targeting on your users, but we're doing nothing on our end at a business level to educate our team, how can we expect them to defend themselves? It's setting them up for failure. And unfortunately, I think the IT industry is putting a lot of blame on them, saying, you know, I've seen a lot of marketing, users are your biggest weakness and users are your biggest threats. And whilst that's not entirely inaccurate, I think it's certainly unfair. But I think that's also largely because IT people, and again, I'm not going to be popular for this, just generally, they're not cyber people. They're two very different disciplines.
So this gets to our last potential, well, one of the biggest myths, that it's a tech problem.
Yes, the topic of today's talk, 100%. And this is a multifaceted. I think, again, we've done a pretty poor job at explaining it as an industry, and I think some of that is also a little bit of greed. Obviously, if you've got an IT person and you've got a tech cyber problem, you're going to go to your IT guy because you think it's an IT problem, and he's going to, instead of saying, well, hang on a second, that's really not my area of expertise, you really need to engage someone else. Most, and you'll see online, if you jump on LinkedIn, everybody's a cybersecurity expert overnight. No different to how through COVID, everybody became epidemiologists and expert virologists.
Yes. I heard Karen on Facebook is now providing cybersecurity stuff too.
Yeah.
But like back when everyone was a Y2K consultant, right? Remember those?
Yeah.
You're probably too young then. Yeah.
No, I went through the .com boom. I was cutting code and doing some stuff back then. But this is the challenge. Number one, businesses are bombarded every day by marketing around cybersecurity. Number two, there's cybersecurity news and hacking events and things in the paper all the time. And number three, the cyber professionals, there is a huge shortfall. There's a shortage of cyber professionals. So none of us are looking for work, and we're all very busy working with clients. So there's not a lot of noise being made by our industry, and therefore the IT industry, which is jumping on board to try and cash in on the opportunity, is louder, and that's who you typically go to. But what happens when technical people get involved, you end up trying to solve the technical problem of cybersecurity. But cybersecurity is not about that. Cybersecurity is just about risk management. And this is something I wanted to really talk about today and kind of help educate the people on the call. You've got everything you need to deal with the cyber risk. You've dealt with risk in your organizations your whole life, whether it be OH&S, whether it be work cover, whether it be your requirements as a director, financial audit. This is no different. It is just a different area of risk. Where we've failed is we're engaging IT people that want to talk to risk in a technical language because they're technical people. And I'm not saying you don't need your tech people. You absolutely do still need your tech people to help you deploy a component of your cyber strategy. But developing that strategy needs to come from the top. This is a business problem. It needs executive buy-in. It needs an assessment of what is your digital infrastructure? What is all the systems that you use? Do you use Xero? Do you use MyOb? Do you use QuickBooks? Do you use Navision? No, all those platforms that you use. And then what information is in there, and what is the impact to your organization if that particular information happens to be breached or there's some unauthorized access to it. And then looking at all the risks. So you look at all the risks and you do some threat modeling. I say to you, but Dave, what's the worst thing that could happen to your organization? Oh, well, if someone got into all of my intellectual property of all my clearisms, that would be bad. But then you think about it, you go, well, is it really that bad? From a risk point of view, that stuff's in public domain anyway, is it not? Most of those?
Oh, absolutely. I would never leave a clearism unturned, mate.
So at that point, we say, okay, in that particular set of information doesn't require significant amounts of technical controls in order to protect it. Your payroll information, which is covered under the Australian privacy principles, that is a different story. That's quite sensitive information, and we probably do need to, we'd get into some trouble if we had that leaked. So that requires a different level of assessment. And therefore, when you're doing this risk assessment at a business level, you're going through and saying, okay, what's the cost what's the risk? What can we do to reduce the risk? And then how much does that cost? And then is the organization prepared to invest that sum of money to reduce that risk? And remember, with risk, like all of your other risks, you can reduce it, so you can mitigate the risk. You can accept the risk and just move on, or you can transfer the risk. And as I was saying before, transferring the risk is obviously talking about cyber insurance, but you've got to be careful because it doesn't always transfer all of the risk. But
yeah, absolutely. So let's just touch on a couple of things quickly. So, firstly, cyber then is risk informed first and foremost, right?
100%.
Right. So we got to start with risk, and it's much like if you prang your car, the insurance company sends out an assessor to assess the damages and then sends it to the mechanic to do the repairs.
Yep.
So we're talking the same kind of thing here, that cyber, if there's a potential whatever, you should have a risk assessment done. You don't get the mechanic in to come do the risk assessment.
Correct. So you don't get your IT guy to come in and do a risk assessment about your cyber risk when his expertise and skill is in developing your technology, maintaining your technology, implementing, configuring. It's the same as for people here. I like to talk in financial acronyms because examples, because most organizations understand financials. If your accountant has put together your financials for the end of the year, they can't then do the audit. You need an external auditor to come and audit it, right? Because you can't have the fox watching the hen house, so to speak.
No.
That's not independent. It's not impartial.
Right.
And that's a fundamental problem I think that we have is 9 times out of 10, 3 reasons why someone or an organization looks at cyber. First and foremost, you've had some kind of incident. You've talked to you're trying to use your system, it's not available, it doesn't work, something odd's happening, you call the IT guy, you've been hacked. And then all of a sudden it's, let's try and fix that. And then we panic and try to say, okay, can you protect it so we don't happen again? Number 2, obviously, is organizations hear there's something happened in the media and they go, ooh, could that happen to us? And you're in your IT guy and you say, hey, I heard that XYZ organization had all their data leaked. Could that happen to us? And they say, well, probably. Okay, great. What should we do about it? And then again, it becomes a technical-led program of how do I protect everything instead of a business risk assessment of what is all the things we have to defend, what are the most important things, and what can we do to protect those things? And then making sure that we're linking a return on investment to it. If the asset costs $10,000, but the control to secure it costs $50,000 a year, it's probably not wise to invest that amount of money. And that's, I think, goes back to that concept sometimes of people thinking that cyber is too hard and too expensive. It is.
But then we're definitely going to address some of that there at that stage. But sometimes it's like best practice. I find best practice always an interesting concept. Like, there's nothing wrong with best practice, but what's best practice for one organization doesn't mean it will be best practice for your organization. So in that situation, well, hey, these guys got hacked. Here's what they did. Here's what best practice looks like. Let's just put best practice into our business. What, isn't that an assessment enough, Brendon?
Yeah, I love that. That whole, I've got this slide on some of my presentations where there's a bird with its head in the sand, and it says, this is most people's approach to cybersecurity is just to stick their head in the sand and hope that it doesn't happen. And the second option for that, or the second thing I see most happen is we want the silver bullet. Companies just make this problem go away. I just need cybersecurity. It's like, but what do you need from a cybersecurity? Do you need compliance? Do you need risk assessment, threat hunting? Which service from a cybersecurity standpoint do you need? And it's, I just need cyber, just give me the magic bullet. And there are organizations, unfortunately, out there that are unscrupulous, and it's an unregulated industry, unfortunately, and they offer that. They say to me, just take this and we'll it'll fix all your problems.
Take these and call me in the morning.
And it's just not the case, because your organization is completely different to the one down the road. You have different information, you have different systems, and different profit margins and different revenues, and what makes sense for one organization doesn't make sense for another. There's also regulatory compliance, there's legislative compliance. Your industry may have some compliance requirements that another industry doesn't. So what works for one doesn't work for other. There's no magic bullet. It's not overly difficult though. You just need to find a competent partner that can take you on the journey to do a risk assessment, and then you just go down the path of what's our biggest risks and how do we mitigate those. And you start at the top, and it's just a continuous journey.
Okay. So let's talk about strategy. Let's get into the nuts and bolts. We're half an hour into this. Let's talk about, so what are the steps to formulating? So you got a risk assessment, and there's a whole bunch that can be done.
Yep.
That's number one. So we've realized that it's a risk thing first. So it's got to be risk informed. So let's talk about then, what are the 4 or 5, whatever simple steps to develop your cyber strategy?
I like to follow the so there's various models from creating. What we're talking about now is development of a good cybersecurity strategy. And the first thing you shouldn't do is go out and take your IT provider or some random provider's concept or strategy. There are internationally recognized frameworks for doing that. We like to use the risk cybersecurity framework, and it has 5 steps. Identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Identify is what we were just talking about. And this is the part that everybody skips. It's sitting down as an organization on the whiteboard with your executives saying, what are all the information assets that we have? What is the worst thing that could happen to our organization? And if I'm involved in doing it, I always like to ask why. I ask my 5 whys. Why would that be bad, Dave? And then, oh, well, this would happen. And then why would that be bad, Dave? And this would happen. Why would it? And if you keep going and you dig and dig and dig, and you end up digging into what's actually the root, absolute, geez, if that happened, that would be business ending for us. Once you've gone through and identified, all your risks, you create what's called a risk treatment plan, and that should be also done at a business level with a security practitioner, and they give it to you in terms of cost versus benefit. Here is the risk. We can reduce it at 90% or 60% or 50% for X investment. And the probability of this particular risk occurring is Y, and the cost would be Z. And then it's really easy. This whole concept of security doesn't become complex anymore. It's easy for business leaders, boards, executive teams to make decisions, because it's all just numbers. And it just comes, okay, are we prepared to accept that risk, or do we want to put some investment into reducing it? Outside of that becomes a risk treatment plan. And that's where you say, okay, we need to put these technical controls and things, and that's where your IT people can get involved. And I'm not saying we don't need IT people. They absolutely are a critical component of one's strategy. It's just not the entire strategy. It's just a small component of the strategy. Right. The other, and we should have probably busted this myth up at the start, but the other thing I see organizations make a massive mistake is they spend all their money in the next phase, which is protect. And I kind of touched on it before. We've had this concept, much like the medieval times, where we build a castle, we stick all of our assets in the castle, we build a big moat around it and a drawbridge, and everyone in the castle we trust. Everybody outside we don't trust, and we control the environment by that drawbridge. That whole concept is okay, but we've moved past it. Security, the threat actors are so more sophisticated, so more well-funded. If you're talking about an organization making $1 billion a year, jeez, they can afford far more resources to work out how to break into your network and steal your data than you can spend on defense. So when you have such a big mismatch of resources, you've got to change your strategy. The defense strategy doesn't work. So that's why we talk about the next phase, which is the detect phase. So we've identified what we've got, what assets we want. We've come up with a risk treatment plan. We've gone through and said to our IT guys, okay, guys, we need to put these controls in place. Put all these defenses. Put our put our tanks over here. Put our radar over there. Stick our jets over here, our fighter jets. The next phase is then detect. Most organizations don't get past protect. They talk to the IT guy. He says, oh, you need all these controls. We go and put them in. Detect is about scouting. It's about making sure that we've got GPS running. It's about looking at all the analytics and looking at what's happening in the network and looking at what users are doing and what behaviors. If Dave Clare lives in Western Australia and is always logged in from Western Australia, and all of a sudden he's logging in from Iraq or Kuwait or Europe, that's something that's unusual, especially if he then is still also logging in from Western Australia, because he can't be in two places at the same time. So that should be raising warning bells. It should be raising alarms. And that's kind of the detect system, or the detect phase of your strategy, is about making sure you're also investing in detective measures so that you can detect a event early, because what we know is the longer a threat actor stays in your environment, the more damage they can do. No different to how you defend your home. If someone can come into your home,
sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just saying, if someone goes into your house, you haven't got an alarm, and there's no visible access to the road to see that you're in there, and they can spend a couple of hours snooping through your entire house. They'll find all of your valuables, your jewelry that you hid, in the drawers, the money that's in the back of the fridge, under the mattress, your iPhones, your iPads, all your mobile devices, and anything that is of value will be gone. But if you've got an alarm and you've got and it's monitored, and you're going to have the security company return in 3 to 5 minutes, if they've only got 5 minutes, sure, they might still swipe the phone or the camera that's sitting on the bench, but they don't have that time to go in and really investigate what you've got of value and take it all. So that's the value of also investing in that detect phase.
Okay, so is that like so like in old military terms, they would send the scout out, and then they would come racing back towards scout. The enemy is coming. The enemy is coming. Like, is that kind of what we're talking about? Is like just getting a forewarning that either that they're on their way, or they're making an attempt, or the fact that if they are in there, they've only got like 30 seconds before the alarm goes off.
Correct. No different to smoke detectors in your house as well. In the early stages of a fire, it starts to smolder. Let's give them a warning so you've got time to get out. It's about detecting something before the event happens so that you can do something about it. Which then leads into our next phase, which is respond. And again, respond is nothing. It's nothing difficult to understand. It's just the fire plan. And I like to talk about respond a lot because, again, this is an area where a lot of organizations fail, or they just don't invest any money in it. And the respond part is about making sure that when an event happens, so when that smoke detector goes off, we know what to do. We've trained children in schools to exit and go to this particular area and make sure that they sit there. Organizations in business have fire wardens and fire plans. When the alarm goes off, this person is going to grab the fire warden hat, they're going to grab the register, and we're all going to exit through these possible exits. We're going to assemble at this point, and then we're going to do a roll check, and then we're going to exit the premises through here. Respond is very similar in cyber. It is, who are you going to call, and who do we need to inform from a business? So are we going to let the executives know? Are we going to let the managers know? Who can actually dictate that, yes, there's been an incident and that we're going to enact our cyber incident response plan? And what professionals and partners do we need to get involved? More importantly, have you got your media coverage responses written, ready to go? I see this quite often where an organization gets hit. I don't know how, I don't know why. I wish the media would work for the good guys, but somehow the media tends to figure out that you've been hacked quite often before some of the people in your organization. I had an organization where they had been informed that there had been some unauthorized access on their network. And whilst that organization was in the middle of trying to confirm what happened, someone from one of the national television stations had contacted them to say, we understand that you've had this incident impacting these users, and we're going to publish a story at 5 o'clock today unless you give us a statement. So there's nothing like when you're trying to understand what's happened in terms of you've had a cyber incident, also then having to try and find a PR company, write up what response you want to do, find a lawyer, make sure that the response doesn't implicate you and get you in trouble. That whole PR side becomes a bit of a nightmare. So part of your response plan is now, while we've got the time, while we're calm and we can really sit down and think about things, let's go and work out who we're going to work with who's going to be the cyber incident responders, who's going to be our lawyers, who's going to be our PR, our marketing, who within our organization are we going to have involved in our response, who's going to take lead and be the liaison between all of those partners, because you don't want me talking to one of them and then Dave talking to the other one, and then all of a sudden 2 partners have got 2 different messages from the same organization. making sure that we have what I call that kind of that hit squad. You know, your A team, and we know that whenever we do this, bam, this is the team that's gonna reply, and these are all the various things that we've got to do, and everyone knows what they're doing, and everyone knows how they're doing it, and all your employees, all your team members also know that, so that if they're being contacted by the media, they know their response is, can you please speak with XYZ person, because that's who's handling media relations for this particular organization.
Well, that's something that most people would never even have thought of, you know. And it's like everyone has a fire warden, and if there's a fire alarm or whatever false or not, like the fire warden was the one who ushered people follow. You know, they've got all these drills and everything's drilled on how to do this. But even I would never have thought about like having a prepared response for, like, especially from the media component. Like that, like little thing like that could just trip you right up too. Because imagine the PR damage if it's not handled properly. Like that could be just equally, if not more damaging than the actual cyber attack itself.
Responding to a cyber incident is really stressful. It'll be one of the most stressful periods of your life, especially if you're a larger organization with a national presence or a big brand presence. And that's just morally being concerned that someone's been in your network, and, you know, what damage has it done to your clients and your customers and your systems and so forth. Having to then compound that with the stress of trying to make sure that you are transparent and responding promptly to the event and communicating with your clients, and at the same time not providing messaging that's confusing, that either makes out that the incident is not as bad as it is, or worse, makes out that the incident is worse than it is. You get judged based on your public response. And there's lots of big companies that have failed in this. They're getting better now because people are putting these things in place. If you really want to go advanced in this section, threat, we do the same as you do your fire drills. You can do a cyber drill. So, you know, there's organizations out there that, using technology, you put your VR goggles on and we pick an incident, and you go through this incident as if it's happening to you, and it's in VR. It thinks, feels like this is actually a real thing. It's really fun to do, but it invokes an emotional response. Like you do start getting the heart rate up, but it's a great thing to do to really prepare for one. And then the last thing,
just on that, like, I think there's one, like, this whole respond thing is really, it's something you and I haven't talked too much about before, so it's really hit me a little. It's like anything in life, right? It's how you interpret it and how you respond to it that makes the difference.
It's whether you're responding or reacting.
Yeah.
Most organizations react.
Yeah. Well, that's only because they don't have a plan in place. They don't know how. They're not prepared. And so what you're talking about is the planning and preparation. And I know we're probably talking about this, you know, that you will be breached.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the stats that we've already discussed, you know, and the comments have been made. So, like, just please, anyone listening to this, watching this, do not underestimate the whole response part of this strategy. I mean, ID, yep, great. Protect, yep, detect, but respond. Holy crap, this could be the one.
And don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Obviously, very large multinationals with hundreds of thousands of employees have very detailed response plans.
Yep.
If you're an organization with 20 or 30 staff, or even 5 staff, your response plan might be a one-pager. The director of the organization is going to call the response. He's going to be point, and we're going to engage the insurer and this lawyer and these marketing people. That's it. Like, doesn't have to be overly complex. You just got to make sure that the key things are covered off. And lastly, if you're going to form a good cyber strategy, you've got to think about your recover. And it really surprises me that in today's age, organizations still don't have what we call business continuity and disaster recovery plans. These have been a thing for as long as technology has existed. And again, this is a business executive, or it's a business problem. If our organization is down, what is the maximum time that we can tolerate the systems being offline? What impact does that have to our services, to our clients, and what mitigations do we need to put in place such that we can recover within that time frame so that it doesn't adversely impact our organization. Think of recover like having a spare tire. You want to go from point A to point B, you always carry a spare tire in the car, because if something were to happen and your tire goes flat, at least you can limp along. Sure, you can't go and do 100 kilometers an hour down the freeway, but you can drive the car long enough to get it to somewhere where you can get help. Or if it's 10 o'clock at night, look at that vehicle when it's safe to do so. We're not on the side of the road, you know, or walking trying to find a telephone booth, or waiting in the 4-degree temperatures at the middle of the night because our tire's gone flat. So the recover section is all about, again, who's going to be tasked with the responsibility for restoring our systems? Does the organization understand when a recovery incident is called, this is how much information we're going to lose, because our last backup was at this point. So anything that was changed from, and that might be an hour, it might be a day, it might be 6 hours, as long as the organization is being consulted and understands, and this is that assurance that inspires confidence. You need to know this stuff. Right? If you've got a competent technology partner, then this should be in your plan, and you should be annually reviewing the plan. And if you are, then you know. And you can say to me, yeah, Brendon, if the worst absolute thing happened, I know that I can recover all systems in this time frame, and I'm maximum going to lose this much of my of work. That's going to cost me this much money, and my organization, we can sustain that. That's that level of confidence that you want from your backup plan, and also from your cyber plan.
All right. So we've got identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Spot on. Okay. Now, interesting, while we were having that chat, my brother, Jason, who's probably one of the top business development guys for a equipment company, I won't name the company, but they sell lots of high-tech equipment for people for printing and bits and pieces. And I'm sure he'll tell me off that we do more than that, Dave. But Jason, thank you for sharing. He sent me the Notifiable data breaches report from January to June for Australia. And top 5 industry sectors to notify data breaches. Surprisingly, health service providers had over 80 breaches that they identified. Financial, including superannuation, legal, accounting, and management services, the Australian government, and insurance companies. 65% of data breaches affected 100 people or fewer, so small, but still. Of the data breaches, the significant 65% of those were malicious or criminal attacks. So of the 43% of all data breaches, 192 notifications resulted from cybersecurity incidents. Hacking was 9%, brute force attack was 5%, malware was 5%, phishing was 30%, compromised or stolen credentials 27%, and ransomware 24%. Like that's just the first 6 months of this year. Yeah. Like
this is a $1 billion industry, and it's a $1 billion industry. There's a low barrier to entrance. As long as you're happy to live in along, a non-extradition kind of treaty country.
You too could have your own ransomware business.
And what I challenge the listeners is to think, to expand their mind and think about countries that are less fortunate than the countries that we're broadcasting from. So you may think, well, why would anyone want to do this type of work, and it's criminal activity and all that kind of stuff. But if you think about people's lives and the environment that they're living in, if someone says to you, here's an opportunity, and that's how they advertise these. Here's an opportunity for you to make 100 times what you earn a month in a week. And we'll help you anonymize your location. We'll help you stay under the radar of law enforcement. You talked about values before, Dave. They're very much like that. We will make sure that we protect you. You'll be part of our family. And unfortunately, there's 2 organizations in the world that do a great job at creating fierce camaraderie. One is the militaries. Militaries are generally really good at it. And the second are criminal gangs. There's not too many organizations where people will die for their cause. And those 2 are, I'd say, top of the world. And unfortunately, that is why many organizations either unknowingly fall into the trap. And often when they fall into the trap unknowingly, they've already committed so many offences that they are then held to ransom by their employer, saying, well, yeah, okay, you realise we're doing criminal activity, but if you want to leave, we're going to report all of your activity to law enforcement.
Yeah, we'll make sure that you're protected unless you choose to leave. Then we're going to tell on you.
Yeah. So it can be very difficult for people to get out once they're in, and they also are very much, they try to recruit young. They'll jump on gaming forums. They'll try to recruit during 14, 15-year-olds, get them thrown away from home, and all that kind of stuff is unfortunately happening.
Was it you who shared with me that the Mexican drug cartels are now using gamers? They're as a
Yep.
There was a great. I was telling this to my son, who's a web developer, and it was we talk about this sort of stuff. And you might be too young again. The Last Starfighter. It was a great movie where there was this old arcade game put in all these different places, and people would play it, and they were trying to find who could play the game the best, because then they would come down and get them to come help them fight the war. Classic movie, really a great cult movie back in the day. That's it. They were using that to recruit people to join the intergalactic military to defend off and save the universe. But that's obviously in a positive light, one would think. But then the same concept obviously works in reverse. But
and they've been doing it.
Sorry. So we've gone through myths. We've talked about strategy. Let's quickly jump through some rapid fire objections, because most of them we've probably already addressed anyway. But I'm going to throw these at you quick and give us the quick answer to these. Brendon, my IT guy's got this covered.
If you need brain surgery, are you going to go to the GP, or are you going to go to the brain surgeon specialist who has had 10 years of his GP and then another 10 years of doing brain surgery? Your IT guy absolutely needs to be involved in a component of delivering your strategy, but the fundamental creation, development of your strategy, and that assessment of risk, so that you are putting your money, your limited resources, and getting the best bang for buck. We're investing the minimum amount of money to deliver the biggest amount of risk reduction. That's where you want to try and go. No one's got an unlimited IT budget for cybersecurity.
Don't you wish?
What? Yeah, I do. There's another whole podcast on do I spend 1%, 3%, 5% of revenue on it? But you don't have an unlimited budget. You've got to try and defend and try to use the 80-20 rule there, Pareto principle. What's the 20% of data that's absolutely critical to your organization, and how do we deliver the maximum amount of protection to that data? I'm not trying to defend the whole country. I'm just trying to defend my little patch. Yep.
Okay, so that's one. So it's too expensive, Brendon. It's just this whole cyber thing is way too expensive. Way too expensive. Yeah. I don't have an unlimited IT budget.
This could be another whole podcast too. It absolutely is if you don't do what we just mentioned. So if you don't take a risk approach, you don't understand what your digital infrastructure is, and you're trying to protect everything, absolutely, it's going to be really expensive, because you're trying to you're trying to reduce all risk across all digital assets to zero. That is going to be very expensive. But if you work on it, if you chunk it down the way you eat an elephant, you eat it one piece at a time. Yeah. First, let's get a list of what we're trying to protect. Second, let's work out what's at most risk. And then let's just go and do that one this quarter. Just reduce the risk of the payroll system, because that's at most risk right now. And then next quarter, we look at the next risk. What's the next biggest risk on our risk register? And then we go and reduce that risk. If you structure it like that, take it in small chunks, focus it really narrow just to that 20%, and do it time after time repeatedly, it doesn't become super expensive, and it allows you to spread that cost over time.
Yeah, but you're also starting at the smartest place first, and then building forward so that you build it into your plan as you go forward. Yeah, because once again, you could go and invest in every single thing that you should, and then put yourself out of business in the process of doing it.
Absolutely, or worse, and again, I see this, what happens most of the time is someone gets an attack, IT guy goes, oh, you beauty, we need firewall and EDR and antivirus and application whitelisting and backups and this and this and this and this. And they go and put all this stuff in. And what you've done is you've actually increased your attack surface, because everything that you put in, every tool, every technology, it's all has vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
They're all threats. So all of those tools then need to be managed, need to be monitored, need to be configured to best practice, as you mentioned before, Dave.
Yep.
And often IT people, unfortunately, there's no secret, the IT industry is unregulated. There's no barrier to entrance to be an IT provider anymore, especially now that we're in this age of the cloud. Have you gone and actually worked out whether your IT person is qualified in whatever tool or thing that they're delivering for you? Do they actually know what the best practice is? How many of them have they installed in the past? Are they monitoring it? All of those questions. So you've got to be very careful with your strategy and what you do, because sometimes you get what I call the illusion of security. And I get this also quite a lot when I'm doing audit work for an organization. They walk in and either the owner or the IT person's like, you're not going to find anything in our network, Brendon. We've spent hundreds of thousands a year on cyber. And you go in and start having a look, and they might spend hundreds of thousands a year on cyber, but they've got they put the security screen door in on the house, but they didn't lock it. So great, or you've got roller shutters. I spent $50,000 on roller shutters, but they're all up. We never put them down. Got an alarm,
down,
but
there's no locking mechanism anyway, right? They're there, but they don't work. They don't lock.
Yeah. I got the alarm, but I haven't turned it on, so it's not detecting anything. So you've just got to be very careful and make sure that Alan, that's great.
Yeah, well, Alan,
absolutely.
You're right, though. You should grab out a pad and paper and pencil, and then start mapping out your strategy first. Probably the best thing that you could do. There's a whole bunch. We're running low on time, so I want to keep a couple more. I'm too small. No one's going to bother with. Like, I'm just a little fish.
Yeah.
They're not. They're not going to worry about me.
That's just a misconception. If you've got money or you've got clients, you're a target. And you're a target because of two reasons. Number one, you're not going to have the defenses of larger organizations. Understand that most of these threat actors, they're lazy. Okay, there's a reason they chose the life of crime. If it's not out of an abundance of need or circumstance, it's because they wanted the most amount of money with the least amount of effort. They're not going to go and attack a well-sophisticated and secured government network or stock exchange or big organization. They are attacking low-hanging fruit. Australia is a big attack, and the reason that stats show such a high number in Australia is because 97% of Australian businesses are less than 30 staff. When you have organizations of that size, they don't have dedicated CISOs and security people and information security management systems and policies and all this stuff. So they're easy to attack. And you might not have any intellectual property.
The likelihood of being attacked is greater then, because it's easy. You're low-hanging fruit, right? So you're just. That's right. You just got a steering wheel lock on your car, and it's not like you have a Ferrari with all the alarms and it's in a garage. It's housed with another alarm, and the roller doors that actually have locks on them and cameras.
Your cyber strategy is you're not trying to be Fort Knox. So to that expensive thing, we're not trying to be the best and most, reduce our risk to zero. We're trying to improve our defenses so that if someone comes to the house and they look to your next door neighbor and you've got CCTV, roller shutters, a security door, a dog, lights, they go, you know what, I'm going to go to this place next door because that looks much easier. And then we're just making sure that we've invested in that detect, respond and recover, so that if something does happen, if someone does manage to break through or decides that they've got a wish to be caught, that we can detect them quickly, kick them out, respond, fix the house and recover and get back to work.
So then, and we've only got about a minute or so left, but I know there's some things that we want to talk about how to quickly get started. Last one I won't get you to respond to, but based on all you've said, then there's the movie Taken with Liam Neeson in it. All right, I love it. And then there's the stage where his daughter's over in Europe and he's speaking to her on the phone. There's somebody in the house. She's hiding under the bed, and he knows already that she's about to be taken. And he's like, assume you're about to be taken because you're about to be taken. Here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to pay attention to. So for anyone listening or watching this, assume you will be breached. But listen to what Brendon has shared with you. and be prepared that you will be breached. At some stage, sometime, you will be breached. And it's your ability to be prepared for all that will determine how well you survive through it. So, Brendon, if people want to start, what do they, where do we start?
Yep.
And who should be helping them?
There's lots of things you can do, and you're probably going to see lots of providers give you technical controls. Go and do this and that, and implement this thing and that thing, and patch applications.
Multi-factor authentication, and make sure your firewalls are there, and which are all sound. It's all sound advice, right?
Correct. Doing those things isn't going to be negative, of course. I think first and foremost, as leaders, as managers, as directors, of whatever your role is in the organization, understand that there is no silver bullet, that you need to take charge and you need to take responsibility, because fundamentally, when you do get breached, it is going to be your head on the chopping block. And it's going to be you that either the Office of the Australian Information Commissioner or your clients or your investors are going to be asking for a response. What did you do to prevent this incident from occurring? So take charge, take responsibility, and understand that if to date you've been getting advice that you don't understand, that it's not your fault, all right? It's not your failure to understand what advice has been given to you. It's the fault of whoever you've been working with to communicate it in business language. They've probably not been talking to you in governance, risk compliance, and in risk-based approach. So take charge is number one. Number two, it starts at the top. You have absolutely got to get buy-in from senior management, from the board or the owners, whoever is at the top of your particular organization, and it needs to have some investment. We need to carve out in the budget some investment for it. Then understand and just accept that you're never going to reduce risk to zero, you're never going to be finished, and that this entire concept of cyber risk management is a process of continually assessing risk and then trying to mitigate it. Because threat actors constantly change how they are attacking you. They come up with new schemes, new mechanisms, new attack surfaces, your attack surface will always be evolving. And so much like in military, they do something, we do something, they do something, we do something. They come up with a new attack, we put something else in place. There's a new risk, we've got to go and work out how to address it. So understand that this is not a once-off investment, but it's going to be a continual investment. So when you're carving out that budget, make it an annual budget. Then get some leverage. You can't do it on your own. Find a competent, qualified, and experienced cybersecurity professional practitioner that can work with you to develop your cybersecurity strategy, that can talk to you in business language, in language that you can understand, and that can help you enable the rest of your teams to actually go and deploy and deliver your strategy. If, and I'm going to preface this, if you do want the magic bullet, or if you don't want to go and do a risk-based approach to your information security strategy. So if you just want tick box compliance, and I recommend against it, of course, because it is not the way, it's not the right way to go about cybersecurity. But if you're an Australian organisation, implement the Australian Cybersecurity Essential 8 strategies to mitigate security incidents. That is a list that has been curated by the Australian Cybersecurity Centre. It is curated and updated regularly based on the incidents that they're seeing across Australian organisations. And that list is ordered from 1 to 8. And basically, if you put the first control in, it reduces so much risk. If you put the second control in, it reduces even more risk. Again, that is not a silver bullet. You're going to be better off than where you are today by adopting that approach, but it is not a risk-based or not a risk-informed approach. It's not going to be assurance that inspires confidence. You're not going to know 100% hands on heart that if we have an event, we're going to be able to recover, we're going to be able to detect it, that we have a response plan, that we have all those things in place, but at least it helps you with your defense strategy. I've got some, if you want...
Let me just quickly summarize it. So take charge. It starts at the top. Understand and accept that there'll never be zero risk. Get some leverage. Find a qualified professional to help you strategize in business terms.
Yep, and start today.
Oh, okay. Start now.
Yeah, don't leave it to tomorrow.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. So, do you have any advice then for people when they're looking at? So that's what they have. A great way to think about it in step-by-step plan. How to choose that right person.
Absolutely. I've actually got, we've got a little document that we give out to people that are looking to try and find a competent security partner. It's just 5 questions that they can ask their practitioner to make sure that they're dutifully qualified and so forth. It also has 3 things to look for when you're on the call. So 3 kind of red flags, and it's like dating. You know, when you're on a date, if I hear this, or this, that's it, I'm done. It's very similar to that. If you hear this, that's a red flag, get out. I'm happy to share that, Dave, with anyone that wants. They just DM me on LinkedIn, and I'll shoot that across to them.
It's the 5
critical questions to ask prospective information security providers.
Okay. Let's put a note and put it up on here.
I'll give the sneak peek. One of the most critical questions you can ask is, are they qualified, and are those qualifications still current? Because one, are they actually qualified in security? And then often they'll be like, yeah, I'm qualified. And then you look at the qualification, it was done 20 years ago, and it's no longer relevant.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right. So if anybody wants that, thanks, Al, and
Thanks,
those
Al.
people who've been watching who've had to disappear. Really appreciate your commentary and your time and attention on the live stream today. But if you do want the 5 critical questions asked, contact Brendon, and he will send it to you for free. You know, it's really important here to understand there's some myths we covered, so please understand those myth conceptions that exist out there. Brendon's offered a really simple but core strategy in 5 steps to identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. We've looked at some potential objections, and now you know where to start, and Brendon's going to give you the list of how to find the right person for you there if you want to reach out and grab them from him. Brendon, we're well over time, but you know, as you said, we could have probably done this we could have done a whole 4 hours on this and gotten great. Mate, I want to just thank you so much on behalf of everybody who's
pleasure, Dave.
Will watch this. The work that you're doing for Australian, you know, transforming Australian organizations, it's just so important, and you know, helping them strategically stay ahead of the game. I know you provide that support to me and our organization. And I just want to thank you on behalf of all those that you currently do it for and those that you will be doing it for, because having this right approach to cybersecurity, it's like going back to when OH&S was the whole workplace health and safety was a new thing, you know, and not that this is a new thing, it's been around for a while, but it's the same level of you know, security, safety, and really needs the same level of attention that the other stuff gets. And knowing that there's people like you there who are going about it the right way and supporting people with that is awesome, man. So thank you.
What pains me the most is the thing that I love being technology is being used to create human harm. When you're shutting down hospitals and denying people surgeries and you know, trying to attract kids into a life of crime and stuff like that. Technology is supposed to be there to empower our organization. It's supposed to help us do more with less. It's supposed to help us unshackle us from the mundane, repetitive, boring tasks and allow us to focus on the people stuff. And to see it used in such a negative way is what I'm passionate about and the reason that I've got into it. So from me, thank you very much for providing your platform for me to help educate. If anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them. No strings attached, no fees, and I'm happy to share that document with anybody that's looking. Please stay safe, be vigilant, and maybe we'll do another one, Dave, on cyber insurance if people feel that that's an area that they're a bit confused in.
Yeah, and actually, it might be great. I might even get one of our insurance clients to jump on board and talk about it from the insurance perspective as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, we better get out now. It's 1:00. We've come up to 1 hour and 10 minutes. Mate, once again, thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoy over in Melbourne. Brendon's in Melbourne, if you did not know by his accent. Mate, enjoy getting out this weekend, and we're so excited to see you guys out and about. Enjoying some of the freedoms we've had here in West Australia. Mate, our firewall around WA is pretty strong right now. So, but all the best, and mate, really appreciate your great work, and thanks to the whole team there at ABSH Technology Group too. For now, thanks guys, everyone, for chiming in, watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.
See you later.